Is May 16th, 2022, pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, extended by Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022. This meeting is being conducted via remote means. It is a joint meeting with the Finance Committee and the Town Council. And actually, it is a requirement of the charter that we hold this public hearing on the FY23 budget. I'm going to call upon Andy Steinberg to call the Finance Committee to order.
I call the Finance Committee to order, and I'm going to check to make sure that those members are present, that we can confirm for the minutes and that you can hear and we can hear you. So I will go alphabetically through all members of the Finance Committee. Lynn Griesmer. Present. Bob Hegner.
Present.
Matt Holloway.
Present.
Bernie Kubiak.
Present.
Michelle Miller.
Present.
Kathy Shane.
I'm here.
And of course, I'm present, and Alicia Walker.
Present.
Okay, thank you. Lynn, is back to you to call the council to order.
Thank you. Given that we have a quorum of the council present, I am calling the May 16th, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting of the Town Council to order at 5:05. I will call upon those councilors who have not already been called upon. And at that time, you should unmute your mic and say present. This will indicate that we can hear you and you can hear us. And from time to time, I may have to interrupt to welcome a counselor who has joined us. So I'm going to start. I'm just checking.
I'm here, Shalini.
Shalini Baumil.
Present.
Pat DeAngelis, not yet. Anna Devlin Gothier. She had computer problems. Mandy Jo Haneke is not here. Anika Lopes is not here. Dorothy Pam.
Here.
Pam Rooney.
Here.
Jennifer Taub.
Present.
Okay. There is no chat room. If you have technical difficulties, please let one of us know, meaning me or Athena. And other than that, let me start by saying again, this is a public hearing. We hold public hearings so that residents have an opportunity to address the council on a specific issue. In this case, it is the FY23 operating budget. These comments will be presented orally or in written, and we have received several comments in writing. The time allocated for public hearings is no more than 3 hours. We've actually allocated an hour and a half tonight if we need it. And we will be limiting public comment to 3 minutes. At this point, I just want to mention there are 9 people in the audience, and there may be more as we go forward. I also, as with any public comment, while we may in this case provide information to clarify on a question, we will not in this case be expressing opinion. And we're going to start with a presentation that includes Paul Bockelman, Town Manager, Sean Mangano, Finance Director, and Andy Steinberg, who has one slide that he is going to present as Chair of the Finance Committee. After that, we'll move to questions from councilors, although they have plenty of opportunity to ask those at other times. And then we'll move to the public asking questions and making comments. So Paul and Sean.
Great, thank you, Lynn. And I'm really thank you for the opportunity to present our budget. our budget is, I'm gonna hold it up. We have a few paper copies. It's almost 300 pages. And this is the general government side. There are other parts of it as well. Everything that we mentioned tonight, every document we mentioned is available on the town's website. And it's a budget that took us hundreds of hours, dozens of people to prepare and to present to you. Also, I want to note that this is the beginning of our public engagement process. Tomorrow for 24 hours, Finance Director Sean Mangano will be on an Ask Me Anything, which through social media, anybody can pose a question and he'll be up all night answering questions. Well, maybe not quite that, but it'll be an opportunity for any questions to be asked, and those will all be posted. Friday, we have a Cup of Joe with Paul at 10:30, in which case where it's a typical thing where people can come in and just sort of talk informally with us. There is a public forum on the capital improvement program that will happen in June. And if there'll be other places for members of the public to convey. During February, the Finance Committee is holding twice a week meetings to go through the budget department by department. So there's a lot of opportunity for input into the decision for the town council. You can go to the next slide. And this is a truncated version of what we delivered to the town council during the budget presentation on May 2nd. So I just do want to thank the member of people who put together this budget, really led by Finance Director Sean Mangano and Sonia Aldridge, our esteemed comptroller. Holly Drake, our assistant comptroller, put a tremendous amount of time into it, as well as did all of our department heads. And I also want to acknowledge my colleagues at the library, Sharon Sherry, and at the school department, Mike Morris, for the work that they did to deliver their budgets on time, so that could be incorporated into this. Next slide. So we want to note that this is a tough time for us. We are emerging from the pandemic. We're now morphed into a supply chain and staffing challenges, and which have created new challenges and new pressures on our budget and our expenditures. We have been very successful at taking advantage of grant opportunities that have been out there. And with great success, we'll be finding more of those, I think, as we go forward. At the same time, the council has established goals for the town through a robust public process last fall. And the two overarching goals that have driven this budget process has been sustainability and racial equity. They serve as the lenses for all of our decisions. Next slide. So the budget I present to you tonight is aligned with the goals established by the council. And our presentation will show you how we built the budget to meet the goals that you as town council established. The budget is balanced. The budget does not require an override. The budget addresses some of the long-term needs of the town, specifically our need to invest in our built infrastructure, public safety, and roads and sidewalks. It follows our overall financing plan that includes the strategic use of reserves built up over the past several years to manage the impact of the initial debt payments of our 4 major capital projects. Even with this, our reserves remain strong in preparation for managing the costs of our 4 major capital projects down the road. Next slide. So the town's budget is actually made up of these different elements. There's the municipal budget, which includes the town's 4 enterprise funds, which includes water, sewer, transportation, solid waste, the elementary school budget, the library budget, the Amherst Pelham Regional School District budget, which is always considered separately, and the capital improvement program. And then for context, we also include the budget for this Community Preservation Act and the Community Development Block Grant Program. Those are all together on one site that you can see them all in one place if you're interested in that. Next slide.
So I guess this is my time to take over and just say a few things. What we are operating under is the town charter in Massachusetts general law, and MGL and the charter both provide limitations on what the council can do when considering the operating budget as proposed by the town manager. When we are considering the budget in June, based upon the feedback we received today and what we're hearing at the meetings of the Finance Committee, recommendations of the Finance Committee, and then council discussion. The council makes a decision, but the council is limited in what it can do. It cannot add to the budget. It can only subtract or reduce recommended amounts. There's no other change that is allowed, with one exception. And that exception has to do with if there is a request from the public schools, either the regional school or the local town elementary schools, for a higher amount. Then the council can consider the request of the school committee. It requires a 2/3 vote. It's not a majority vote, and that is all provided in Massachusetts general law and adopted by the charter to comply with Mass general law requirements. So what has been mentioned by the town manager is that there's a robust process that talks about that where we look at the financial indicators at the beginning of the process in November, have a public forum regarding the budget, usually on the same day or very shortly thereafter. And at the same time, the town council is developing the goals for the manager for the next year. Those come together in budget guidelines that are proposed by the Finance Committee to the council, but are adopted and may be changed by the council because it's a committee recommendation, but a council action. That then leads to the town manager taking some time between December and May to develop the budget. The charter requires that he provide the budget to the council by May 1st, and except when it falls on a non-working day, then it's to the next day, which is why this year it was May 2nd. It is referred to the Finance Committee for review, all provided in the charter. And this public hearing is a required part of the process that is in section 5.7 of the charter. It is the Finance Committee that is required to hold a public hearing. And I have asked the council president, who is also a member of the Finance Committee, to actually conduct the rest of the hearing. So this is my last formal role. We then, in June, after there's a recommendation from the Finance Committee, it will adopt the budget and the process starts again. There are two things that I want to note and then conclude and turn this over to Sean. One is that I know that people, and this is from the comments that have been received in writing already, so I can say it with some firm understanding, that there's concerns about things that are not in the budget. I just explained what our limitations are in what we as a council can do with the budget. But the reason that I wanted to have this slide up on the screen is to remind everybody that the public forum that happens in November is really the time to talk about what you would like to see in future budgets. And that if we don't put them into the guidelines, we've really missed the opportunity to say to the town manager, this is what the council would like you to consider. And so I want to sort of alert you and to that part of the process and recognize that the process begins in November. It does not begin at the time of year we're in now. The second thing is that the town manager mentioned the capital improvement program. It actually runs on a separate process. So a lot of what I have said about the council's role in the process don't entirely apply to the capital improvement program. It's a separate section of the charter, and you can find it in the charter. The charter requires that there be a public forum solely on the capital improvement program, and that is a council public forum, and the president has, I believe, scheduled that to happen on June 6th. So with that, Sean, the next slide is to you.
Thank you, Andy. So the proposed budget for FY23 is $89,905,330, which is a 5.1% increase over the FY22 adopted budget. Within that overall budget, the increase is allocated to department or operating budgets, which include the town, the regional school, the elementary school, and the library, was 2.5%. And there was additional funds allocated to the municipal budget so that we could fund CRES for FY23. And then there was a small amount of additional funds for the elementary schools related to a charter and choice tuition change. This proposal also restores capital spending to 10% of the tax levy, which has been a long time goal of the town. And it maintains fiscal discipline in meeting its long-term obligations, which specifically are the pension obligation and other post-employment benefits, which is comprised primarily of health insurance for retirees. We're at the end of FY22, but we entered this year on really solid footing. Reserves were at 21.4 million, or 25% of the FY22 budget. That was intentional. It's been built up over several years. I went back and looked, and about 7 or 8 years ago, we were only at 14%. And so the last few years were incremental changes to get us there. And that was done intentionally so that we would have funds to support the 4 building projects. And as the town manager mentioned, for the first time in FY23, we're proposing taking a withdrawal out of those reserves to fund the first debt payment that we're projecting for the Jones Library project. The town has a AA+ bond rating that we're really proud of. We worked hard to get there, and we continue to work hard to maintain it. This proposal maintains core services by allocating the 2.5% for operating budgets and 10% for capital to make sure that we maintain our critical infrastructure and equipment. And if you review the capital improvement program, you'll see all the details. I'll touch on some highlights tonight, but you'll see the details of some of the building repair projects that are being proposed and some of the equipment replacement projects that are proposed. And for all of our budgets, both the operating budget and the capital budget, we try to take a long-term approach and think forward about the impacts of the decisions we make today. And so in the budget documents, you'll see a 5-year projection for the capital improvement program, and you'll see a 5-year projection for the operating budget. And that's so that we can look down the road, we can see if there's any challenges coming in the future, and we can make adjustments now or incrementally over time to put the town in the best position to deal with any negative bumps in the road coming at us. So the capital improvement program, as I mentioned, it restores the investment to 10% of the tax levy, which is about $1 million more for FY23 than the prior year. The capital improvement program incorporates the projected debt payments for all of the projects into it. 3 of those 4 projects are expected to come out of that 10% of the tax levy, the existing capital funds. Those 3 are the library, the DPW, and the fire, and you'll see that projected. The 4th is the school project, and that's being proposed, at least initially, in the capital improvement program as being funded through a debt exclusion. Those would be funds that are in addition to the 10%, of the tax levy. The capital improvement program addresses deferred maintenance and existing infrastructure. As I said, you'll see a lot of the details of individual projects in the plan. It maintains a commitment to invest in roads and sidewalks that you'll hear more about in a second. And this is really the second or third year that we've taken a greater focus on each individual project and evaluated how it impacts the town's climate goals. And we've looked to see if it's helping the town achieve its goals or if it's sort of hindering or slowing down the town from reaching those goals. And I think the exciting thing about this year's batch of capital projects is that more and more we're seeing these projects help the town meet the goals. There's more hybrid vehicles, there's electric vehicles, there's more projects that make buildings more efficient, and there's greater funds for sustainability. So we're seeing more and more of that as we put this focus on it. Some of the highlights of the capital improvement program. So there's over 1.5 million for roads, including Chapter 90 grant funds from the state. There's 1.5 million to replace the fire department ladder truck, which would be financed through a borrowing and repaid over several years. There's 361,000 for a new ambulance that would be purchased out of the town's ambulance fund. There's 350,000 to replace the gym floor at Cracker Farm, which has had some issues related to some moisture and HVAC challenges. There's 200,000 for sustainability projects. This has been doubled from last year. There's 200,000 for sidewalks, and new this year is 100,000 cost escalation reserve to reflect the rapidly changing prices that we're seeing, so that the prices we propose for the capital improvement program, they might not be what we actually get when we go out to the market to buy whatever it is next year. So this fund would help make up that difference if there's any changes in price. So that's the end of the presentation, but I just wanted to quickly recap some of the engagement events that are coming up that the town manager mentioned already. There's the Cup of Joe on Friday, which is a virtual sort of Q&A that anybody can attend, and that's at 10:30. There's the Ask Me Anything, that's tomorrow, where you can submit questions through different social media platforms, and they'll all get posted in one central spot on the town's Reddit page, and we'll try to answer those as quickly as we can. This week's finance committee meetings are focused, they're both at 9 a.m., one on Tuesday, one on Thursday. The one on Tuesday is focused on public safety and doing a deeper dive into each of our public safety departments, including the new Crest department. And the one on Thursday is focused on public works and our enterprise funds. And I think the last thing I'll just say is, again, we as much as possible, we're advocating for questions to come through the Engage Amherst page. That's www.engageamherst. Let me see if it's .com or .org. And if you go to that page, you'll see one of the first things you'll see there is the Amherst FY23 budget, and there's a Q&A. Actually, you're probably seeing it on my screen right now, aren't you? And if you click on that and go to the middle, there's a budget Q&A where you can submit a question. And so that comes to staff, and we can answer that question, and then the responses get posted publicly down below. So you can see there's one already that's been submitted. And so this kind of keeps a running list of questions so that information is available to everybody. And with that, I think I will stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me add to Sean's list of engagement. And at this point, first of all, we do encourage you to attend Finance Committee meetings. Many of you have been sending comments to town council at amherstma.gov. And if I get it in time, I will then encourage you, if you would like to have it publicly posted, to use that feature that's also on our webpage. In addition to that, different councilors have newsletters, as well as district meetings that are either being held or have been held or are coming up. So please take advantage of that. I also want to mention that the Senior Center has asked each of the district councilors to come and hold office hours 2 different times during the months of June and July. And some of you may want to take advantage of that as well. With that, let me repeat again. We have, first of all, I want to mention that Anna Devlin Gothier was able to reconnect. The minutes should show that she reconnected at 5:13. And I don't see any other counselors at this point. Anna, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Apologies about that. Thank you.
We all have technology issues from time to time. So there are now 19 people in the audience, and I'm going to ask those of you who would like to ask questions or make a comment to raise your hands, and we will bring you into the room. When we do, we want you to state your name, where you live, and proceed with your comments. And we're going to start with Peter Demling. Peter, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
We can.
All right. Cannot see my video. Is my video okay?
We only have your picture up.
Okay,
I mean, your name up. I'm sorry.
okay, thank you. So my name is Peter Demling. I'm a resident of District 5, also a member of the Amherst School Committee. Speaking for myself tonight in support of the school committee's unanimous decision to propose a budget that is $53,000 above the town's original guidance. And what I'd like to do is share what I think are a few important points of context as you consider this proposal. So the first is that the town is receiving $64,000 more in state aid for public schools than was originally planned for when the budget guidance was provided to the schools. So that breaks down to $32,000 in Chapter 70, which is the main line item for state public school aid, and $32,000 in the COVID paid sick leave program, which should be noted the town will be receiving thanks to the determined efforts of the staff of our public school business office. So that's $64,000 in an unanticipated state aid for schools and $53,000 above guidance. In other words, this school budget proposal does not cost the town any more than what the town determined it could afford for the schools when it issued its guidance. The second main point I'd like you to consider is that the school committee has never, to my knowledge, and maybe your memories go further back than mine, proposed a budget that is above guidance, even when it has required painful cuts. And I could itemize these in recent history, as I'm sure you're probably aware from COVID and from the self-insured fiscal health crisis in FY18, I believe it was. So there's a long history of the schools being trustworthy and reliable fiscal partners with the town, and we have always strived to work with the town and with open public ongoing communication. In addition to always meeting the town guidance, we have discussed the possibility the school committee has of needing to possibly exceed the guidance at our public meetings all year, starting with our meeting right after the financial indicators meeting. And we expressed this possibility at the budget coordinating group meeting with the town and town committee representatives, town council representatives. We're also taking the risk of using $400,000 of one-time ESSER funds to support our budget in order to minimize the amount above guidance that we're requesting of the town, without which we would not be able to maintain core services. We have always tried to do the right thing when it comes to budget process and fiscal responsibility with the town, and this year has been no different. So the last point is that in your evaluations, you may feel that approving above guidance should require some uncommon and unusual circumstances, and I would submit for your consideration that's exactly what this is. We are trying everything we can to support our kids as they recover from this awful pandemic, this emotionally traumatizing event, one of the most disruptive things to have ever happened to public schools. And what we're asking for is $53,000 above guidance when the school committee never goes above guidance in a situation where it's already fully covered by the extra unanticipated state aid, and where the school budget is an expression of our community values that would do a world of good for our children. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Peter. I'd also like to note in the minutes that Pat DeAngelis has joined us at 5:30. The next person is Allegra Clark. Please enter the room, state your name and where you live.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. My name is Allegra Clark. I live in District 2. I am a graduate of Amherst Public Schools. I have an incoming kindergartner into the school system, and my husband is a small business owner in town. So I have a lot of investment in this place, and I want to see it be the wonderful place we moved back to be in. So I have a few things I'd like to say, and I will do so in haiku form. And here I go. Now, who keeps us safe? Community resources, not police with guns. Defund APD. Implement CSWG programs, policies. BIPOC Youth Center, but not in the library. It's still a white space. Ambulance tires fall off while driving, not safe. Fund AFD now. The schools shape our youth. Art, tech, support services, para-living wage. Amherst roads are bad. Mom, why is it so bumpy? My 5-year-old asks. Reparations now. End this white supremacy with cannabis funds. Affordable homes, for all in need because the rent is too damn high. Translation access so all folks can understand, not just English here. Anti-racism in all aspects of the town, equality now. I would like to implore that the council adopts a budget which implements all of the community safety working groups program and policy recommendations at the funding levels recommended in their reports, including the DEI office at $354,647 per year, creating and funding the Teen Empowerment Center and BIPOC Cultural Center, funding CRESS at $2.7 million, and implementing a number of changes to when the police are involved instead of the CRESS department. Additionally, I would like to see the reduction of the size of the Amherst Police Department and not having any vacancies filled. And when vacancies come up, I would like to see those positions transferred to the CRESS department. This would help us cut the number of police officers by 50% as was recommended by CSWG. Finally, I am asking that we defund the Amherst Police Department budget by 47%. And then there would still be plenty of officers to address crime and violence while CRESS can handle social service calls. Thank you.
Allegra, thank you for joining us. Kaylee, please enter the room, state your name and where you live.
Kaylee's using an older version of Zoom, so I'm bringing them in as a panelist so that they can speak to us.
Okay.
Can everyone hear me?
We can, Kaylee, thank you.
Great. Hello, my name is Kaylee Brow. I live in District 3 and I've lived in the Valley for my whole life. I've lived in Amherst specifically for the past decade, and I'm the assistant manager of the campus farm at Amherst College. I'm here today to encourage the town council to really commit to fully funding CRESS for $2.7 million. I was looking at the police call logs that were recently posted and noticing that the number of mental health calls has almost tripled over the past year. To me, that's not very surprising considering the way the world is right now, but it's deeply disturbing to me that we've seen such a sharp increase in mental health needs in our town. And it's really alarming to me that over 900 times armed police officers showed up to mental health calls. It's not okay, it's not really effective, and it really needs to stop. It's for that reason that I'm asking town council to fully fund CRESS and support this program that community members have been asking for, because we really, really need it. I understand that there's not a lot of changing of the budget that can happen now. I will remind folks that at the hearing in November, a lot of people showed up and encouraged town council to invest in CRESS and invest in our community and defund the police. I also would like to encourage town council to really look at the CSWG's recommendations for the changes to Amherst Police Department policies. None of those cost money to change, and it would make a really big difference for the amount of truly unnecessary interactions that our community members have with police. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Andrea Munoz Ledo, please enter the room, state your name and where you live.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
My name is Andrea Munoz Ledo, and I'm a senior at Amherst College, so I've spent a significant amount of time in the town of Amherst over the past 4 years. I'd like to say that I'm not here to speak on behalf of the BIPOC BIPOC communities and individuals who know the most about this matter and the changes that need to be implemented in Amherst. I want to use my position of privilege to echo their demands and ask that you prioritize their expertise in the matter. I'm here today to urge the town council to meet the demands of the defund 413 Amherst, which involve cutting the APD budget by 47%, funding and implementing the CSWG's recommended programs, and reducing the size of the APD. The reallocation of these funds will allow for better public services that center racial and environmental justice and that will actually serve the community's needs. The point is not to negate the positive experiences that people have had with the Amherst Police Department. The point is to address the negative, problematic, and often traumatizing experiences that a large amount of people, notably people of color and other marginalized communities, have had. At no point in this process will the changes proposed take away services that people actually need. In fact, they will enable people who have been harmed and continue to be harmed by the racist status quo to feel safe and supported. There's an urgent need to address public safety in Amherst through solutions that move away from policing. Policing protects, upholds, and helps reproduce racism in everyday American life. Different trainings, community policing, and co-responder programs are ineffective solutions that do not address the root of the problem and do not live up to the demands of the Black Lives Matter movements. Issues caused by the systems of oppression that policing upholds cannot be fixed by expanding the police. We need new strategies based on the vision of those who have suffered at the hands of police violence. Well, while it will be necessary to change the APD departmental culture, this will not be enough on its own. That's why the CSWG recommends that the DEI, a Teen Empowerment Center, a BIPOC Cultural Center, and CRESS receive more funding to devise and provide non-coercive, peer-based responses to people in crisis. Finally, it's crucial that as many of these changes as possible are implemented within the 2022-2023 fiscal year. After all, Black communities have been calling for an end to police violence for over 150 years. These actions simply cannot be delayed any longer. Everyone deserves to feel safe. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Andrea. Adam Gibbs, please enter the room, state your name and where you live.
Hello, my name is Adam Gibbs, and I am also a student at Amherst College. Spent a lot of time in the area, and I'm here to express my discontent that this upcoming fiscal year's budget does not include all of the recommendations by the CSWG for funding CRESS and other community support programs. As previous commenters have explained, keeping Amherst Police Department's budget where it is now is unnecessary, and there are a lot of programs that support like the community's mental health and safety in a safe and viable manner that through the other safety programs. And so improving the funding for the DEI office and CRESS is super important, while also giving money and creating a fund to create the Teen Empowerment Center and the BIPOC Cultural Center are going to be super important for creating an environment that allows all students, youth, and people within the community to actually feel safe and supported by the programs within Amherst. Further, cutting the Amherst Police Department budget will be beneficial to reducing the size of the police force, which is important to be able to help fund the other programs. I also would like to express content with the money being spent for housing affordability and encourage the town council to continue funding housing affordability projects and to do that in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us, Adam. Birdie, please enter the room, state your full name and where you live.
Hello, my name is Birdie Newman. I'm a Mount Holyoke student commenting from my home on Memorial Drive in District 3. I want to note I did send a comment for that November meeting you all were talking about. And I'm back because I feel like something I'm learning about advocacy and activism is that you've got to be persistent and use every opportunity you can. And as Kaylee mentioned, there are some powers the council has with affecting school budgets and removing money and recreating policy, and I'm excited to see the council use their power. I want to begin by stating my support of the budget demands brought to the council by Defund 413 Amherst and Sunrise Movement Amherst. To highlight just a few of these asks, I'm calling on our town to do the following. Implement the Community Safety Working Group's program, policy, and funding recommendations. Stop filling vacancies in the APD. Cut the police department's budget by 47%. Fund art, special ed, and ELL in our local schools. And support affordable housing and climate justice initiatives. I was recently looking back at Part A of the Community Safety Working Group's final report and noticing that they provided 3 reasons to reduce the size of the Amherst Police Department. First, fewer officers will be needed as CRESS begins operation. Second, police funding will be needed for other services. And third, reducing the size of the police department will reduce over-policing of Amherst BIPOC communities. To be clear, not all of the demands I'm emphasizing in my comment come from the Community Safety Working Group, but I'm highlighting their explanation here because I've noticed that a lot of people in our town are willing to embrace new programs like CRESS, but reluctant to reduce policing. This is true despite the fact that demands to defund the police, heard louder than ever in 2020 after George Floyd's murder, are a significant part of why we are here discussing public safety and anti-racism today. I understand that to those of us with race, class, and other privileges that allow us to benefit from the status quo, myself included, getting rid of what we know can be scary. But our town is going to evolve, it has to. And we are so fortunate to have leaders like Earl Miller and Pamela Nolan-Young to support our changing community. So it's time to bring our most brave, radical, and compassionate selves to the table, and it's time to defund the police. Thank you so much.
Birdie, thank you for joining us. Marisol Pierce Bonifas, please enter the room, state your name and where you live.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marisol Pierce Bonifas, and I'm a resident of District 1. I'm speaking as a representative from Sunrise Amherst, the local chapter of a national movement working to achieve an intersectional climate and racial justice. Sunrise Amherst works in the town to work towards a more progressive future. We mobilized in the Amherst town election with 4 out of 6 of our candidates endorsed becoming elected and took action in the FY 2022 budget cycle to demand school funding and CRESS and Community Safety Working Group funding with a town hall, public comment, a rally, and 160 signatures from Amherst residents. On April 24th this year, we collaborated with the Progressive Coalition of Amherst on a community forum to welcome all voices to the budget discussion and released a letter that reflected the needs and demands expressed at that forum by residents, union leaders, teachers, firefighters, mental health workers, activists, and more. I am here to speak about the crucial need for adequate CRESS funding so our newly appointed CRESS director and the department can do their job successfully. Last budget cycle, after over a year of the Community Safety Working Group's compiling of research, information, and eventually a full recommendation report, only 6% of the funding they requested was granted in the budget. This is unacceptable. To work towards a brighter future, we must transition towards alternatives to the Amherst Police Department to provide a safe community for all residents, not just those who are privileged and white. By fully funding and supporting CRESS, the Amherst Town Council would be actively listening and acting upon our residents' demands. We want you not only to hear us, but to act. For too long, I've watched our town government hold empty promises while you pretend to listen. I see no real action. The average town employee in Amherst makes $74,000 per year, while the average police officer makes $101,000 per year. Police officer salaries are 86% above the national average, 6% higher than teachers, and 144% higher than paraprofessionals. You can find these statistics I'm referencing in employee salaries from amherstmass.gov and in the letters to the editor in the Amherst Indy by Zoe Crabtree. The prioritization of police in this town is unacceptable. We must value all voices, and the sun will rise with progressive budgets in Amherst. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Marisol. Zoe, please enter the room, state your name and where you live.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. And thanks, Marisol, for citing my article. So my name is Zoe Crabtree, and I live in District 5. I was really disappointed to see in Town Manager Bockelman's kind of introductory letter to the budget this year that the new department of CRESS is referred to as being fully funded in this proposal, because in the CSWG's recommendation, the program was recommended and designed to be about $2.7 million for a year. I know we're still scaling up, but this is the first year that is going to be operational for the whole year. And the sort of explanation for why they got a smaller budget last year was that they were only going to be operating for part of the year. So now that they're going to be operating for a full year, I would hope that they would have the full funding that was recommended by the CSWG in their very thoughtful proposal. Bockelman goes on to say later in that letter that CREST cannot be funded entirely by reductions in funding for the police department. The police department has over $5 million budget, and the CSWG recommended in a lovely proposal, again, that you all paid for, that we would cut the size of the police department in half over the next couple of years, which does leave a fair amount of room in the budget to fully fund CREST. I was really glad to see that we were able to create the CSWG, and that despite all of the challenges that they experienced, they put in so much work and delivered us these very, very, very valuable reports that were full of so much emotional labor as well as regular labor to create. And it's going to be really disappointing if we don't fully meet the charge that they gave us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us, Zoe. Demetria Shabazz, please enter the room, state your name and where you live.
Hello, I live in South Amherst. My name is Demetria Shabazz, and I am speaking as now a 15-year resident to this community. And I'm asking once again, as a BIPOC member of this town, that the town manager, the staff, and the council members examine your actions through an anti-racist lens. I asked this 2 years ago, which means to look at the historical roots for both explanations and solutions to social, economic, and structural challenges facing this community. For example, a council member and chair of this body suggesting that the residents are not paying attention somehow, and we were late in November. We should have been there in November, and we were. We are engaged and interested in where our tax dollars are going. I've looked at the charter. It says nothing about a November deadline in sections 2.13, 5.14, and 5.15. So, you know, all I can think is that, you know, when our elected officials talk this way about the residents, that they want to engage in this process, that they mean to simply set us aside and to let us know your words, your values, and how you want your tax dollars spent, they don't matter. For instance, the African Heritage Reparations Assembly made a request in October regarding the cannabis tax revenues. They have yet to, hear back if this is actually going to happen. It seems to me as a resident that this is a logical way to go. Again, it's not coming out of your budget. I'm asking also, of course, as you heard here, folks, we need to fund CREST. We need to fully fund CREST. The money that is being spent that I heard in the last Finance Committee meeting, when you last met, $500,000 for yet another study about a youth empowerment center. It is really confusing to the residents, particularly residents that worked with the CSWG and wanted to see a youth empowerment center for BIPOC youth. We need yet another study. You all paid for reports, for research pertaining to that. And now we're going to pay $500,000 more. To what end? And so then the money begins to dissipate because we are paying for yet another study that will then end in the logical conclusion, if we look at the trends within this community, that, oh, we can't pay for a BIPOC empowerment center nor a multicultural center. It makes no sense that once again, the poor, the marginalized, the underrepresented, such as the youth, BIPOC people in this community, and seniors, are being ignored. As a resident, I'm really very disappointed and upset because we spent in conversation, you all have attended anti-racist workshops. To what end? So again, we will be looking. We have, of course, made our request, and we really want you all to honor it because, of course, we will be looking at that come November, as Andy indicated, because we want our tax dollars to speak for our values and really work on behalf of the people in this community, Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Dee. Athena, is the clock still available? I couldn't tell.
Yes, it's still working. Sometimes there's just a delay because I'm switching between multiple windows, but it's working.
Thank you. I just want to note that there's 21 people in the audience. Sean, you have your hand up. Was there?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. This is more of a clarification because I've heard it mentioned a couple different times. So I do just want to sort of officially set the record straight. The $500,000 for an ARPA is not for a study. It's for potential implementation of a youth empowerment center. The town is, with its staff, studying whether the town could do it. So the recreation director and others are studying whether we could, as a town recreation department, implement a youth empowerment center. But the funds themselves are not for the study. The funds themselves would be for the implementation of that project.
Thank you for the clarification. Jeff Lee, please enter the room.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Please state your name and where you live.
Thanks. My name's Jeff Lee. I'm in District 5. And it's been my observation that Amherst, like the country, is experiencing a growing wealth gap. Many in town have the resources and job security to be able to face down inflation and an ailing economy. Many, however, are struggling, living on a fixed income, underemployed, or unemployed altogether. I suspect that you don't hear a great deal from this group at these hearings, but census data shows that they are a significant segment of the community. Amherst's impoverished residents will clearly be most hurt by a possible tax override to pay for what many consider an unnecessarily high-priced and poorly prioritized capital program. I appeal to the Finance Committee and Town Council to be sensitive to this economic reality, even if you yourselves may not be among those who are suffering. Social equity and financial prudence demand it. Thank you.
Jeff, thanks for joining us. Julianhines, please enter the room, state your name and where you live.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
We can, Julian. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. It's good to hear from everyone today. My name is Julianhines. I'm a resident of District 4 and a sophomore at the Amherst Regional High School. After reading the entire FY23 town budget and related documents, I was pleased to see some monies allocated for the CREST program and the DEI department, although I do not believe the monies are enough to fulfill our goals as outlined by the CSWG. I also observed that affordable housing and climate-related programs were goals the town was earmarking funds for. Unfortunately, I do not believe these funds are enough to make significant changes in said emergency issues facing our town. We must fund all action steps on the CART plan and a $40,000 line item for planting 3 trees throughout our town. We also must fund upgrades to our stormwater system to come in compliance with federal environmental regulations. Electric and hybrid vehicles should be the norm when we look to replace our aging fleets, rather than the exception. Funding was allocated to repair Chestnut Court housing, and it's good to see new buildings going in on Southeast Street and Belchertown Road. However, we must increase the amount of available affordable units by creating housing for all our houseless residents and regulating development so that every complex built includes units at affordable rates. Many affordable units have wait lists that are over a year with multiple applications. We must hire a full-time, not part-time housing coordinator to examine these issues and the systems in place, as well as help families living or moving to Amherst. Lastly, our Amherst Fire Department, our frontline first responders, have been short-staffed for decades. We must work to increase staffing from 8 employees per shift to over 13 employees per shift. The inclusion of new staff in the FY23 budget is certainly a step forward, but it does not meet the outlined need in multiple studies. The town council is doing a great job adding new trimmings to the town budget, like renovations to our town's newest building, the Amherst Police Station, and new police vehicles that cost over $40,000 apiece. Unfortunately, at the same time, we fail to maintain core town services like housing, roads, green infrastructure, climate change mitigation, and fire/EMS response. Thank you for your time.
Julian, thanks for joining us. Lauren, please enter the room, state your name and where you live.
Yes. Hi, good evening. This is Lauren. I live in South Amherst, and I want to make this as short and sweet as possible because I've made several comments written and through other meetings, but I do feel like I have to continue to voice my perspective as a 6-year resident, as a person who lives in affordable housing. I live in a 2-bedroom with 3 children. I have a lot of concerns for the youth, for my own and for, those in my immediate community. And I appreciate the comments of those who want to defund the police, but I do not feel like it's a either or situation to promote and fund social services that are needed. Social services, I do not feel have to just be funded through a reduction of the police department. I have seen, and I'm sure that others have realized, the crises that are going on around the world. So at this time, I just don't feel that it's wise to just say defund the police. I appreciate the CREST program that will be implemented soon. That was brought about by the hard work of the CSWG and its recommendations. And I just want to know how monies will be used and what programs will directly impact the youth, because at this juncture, I still do not see what programs have been put forward to directly positively impact the youth. Thank you.
Lauren, thank you for joining us. Before I call on the next speaker, I just want to note and ask that Anika Lopes, who joined us at 6 o'clock, can you hear us? We want to know whether you can hear us and we can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. Vera Cage, please enter the room and state your name and where you live.
Hi, Vera Cage, 12 Long Meadow Drive, Unit 21, Amherst. I know there's another meeting tomorrow to talk about fire and safety funding specifically, but I just wanted to make my comments known tonight that I don't agree with spending $260,000 for police cruisers at the expense of deferring fire equipment. I want the town manager's definition, the fire chief's definition, and the local 1764's rank and file definition for safe staffing levels to be articulated, and the cost attached to their meaning of what safe staffing looks like for our community for fire. I would like to support a more robust effort to replace the central fire station. And I look forward to once again hearing from the counselors as well their opinion about deferring essential safety equipment for our community versus supplying the police department with new cruisers. Thank you.
Vera, thank you for joining us. I want to note that I've been informed that Amherst Media has cut out. I don't know if you have any record of that, Athena. Obviously, it's the TV side of it.
They appear to be connected. Let me check.
Okay. We're just taking a moment to check on the connectivity of Amherst Media. There are 22 people in the audience, along with those of us who are on the council and finance committee and staff. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Athena, are you back yet?
They're checking on the TV connection, but the live stream on YouTube is up and running.
Okay, thank you. Darcy Demont, please state your name, enter the room, state your name and where you live.
Hi, good evening. My name is Darcy Dumont and I live on Pondview Drive in South Amherst. I'd like to congratulate this council on a great start to your second term. And also that I love the proposal for a task force on housing retention. I strongly suggest that you, this is just an aside, show the faces of the public commenters, at least those who've provided public comment in the past, and that would be a lot more public friendly, in my opinion. I appreciate the great amount of work that's gone into this budget. We have a stellar finance department. But I have a few comments which relate to the urgent need to accelerate our climate action implementation. First, I understand that the budget states that everything's being done with a lens of climate action. It is unclear to me, though, actually what that means. It would be nice if we could see the written policy requiring the use of that climate impact lens across departments and how it's applied. I'm glad to hear, Sean, though, that it is being applied, and it would be very helpful to see evidence of our goals and climate action prominently on our website so that the community can join in. Other communities have interactive web pages that encourage engaged community involvement in climate action, which has been proposed but so far not implemented. And we want the urgency of climate action to be apparent. Equally unclear is how the $500,000 of ARPA funds earmarked for sustainability and the $200,000 in capital expenditures are actually going to be spent and how they will advance the town toward the accomplishment of its climate action goals. In particular, the goal of reducing our greenhouse emissions by 25% by 2025. We need specific, separate, prioritized plans for FY 23, 24, and 25 in order to reach those goals with projected greenhouse gas emission reductions attached to each of those actions and budgets. I had earlier asked that the ARPA funds be used to pay for a 2-year staff position that could help implement the town's climate action, adaptation, and resilience plan. As in the implementation of our racial equity goals, there's really no possible way that climate action goals can be actualized without additional staffing in order to put forward the many action items slated for 2025. We can't keep stretching existing staff and giving them more hats to wear. We need to restore positions that have been lost and to create department level positions needed to implement our goals. We need a director of energy and sustainability who could be charged with implementing climate action goals and doing outreach to the community, which could temporarily be an ARPA funded position, as I mentioned. There are so many funding opportunities coming available. Hiring someone to obtain those grants should be a high priority. We also need a director of energy operations who could help site local installations in town, conduct the greenhouse gas inventories needed, etc. Hiring a consultant for each new solar installation is hugely cost ineffective. Having staff to do so, as Newton has, makes a lot of financial sense. We also
need you to finish up. Thank you.
Okay. We also need to replace our position of refuse and recycling coordinator so we can implement a full zero waste program. It appears to me that we need additional staff in fire, IT, other departments, a full-time community participation officer. And I would really like it if we could save out a couple $1 million for at least 20 staff positions, without which we have had real problems carrying out our town goals, especially our 2025 climate action goals. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for joining us. Lydia Irons, please enter the room, state your name and where you live.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, Lydia.
My name is Lydia Irons. I live on Jeffrey Lane in Amherst, but I'm actually calling you from my job as a nurse in a large hospital on an intensive care unit. And I'm taking the time out of my shift today, my lunch break time now here at 6 to voice my support for the demands of Defund 413 Amherst, as well as the Sunrise Movement. I think it's very important that you remember that all of the people showing up here today are doing so because we put in the time and the work and the passion and the energy so that you can hear that we think that our town has a problem with overfunding the police and defunding the community. We all know that community safety from all of the work of the CSWG, but also from endless and countless reports that the community safety does not come from more policing. It comes from more community services. So if you could remember that and look at the demands from Defund as well as Sunrise and take those as seriously as we take them.
Lydia, thank you for joining us tonight. We are going to conclude the public hearing. And we do have a council meeting that starts at 6:30. The council meeting will be on exactly the same Zoom link for both counselors that you use to get into this meeting as panelists, and then for the public that you used using the web link, the Zoom link on the town website. If there are no questions from counselors or comments from counselors at this time, I'll pause for a moment and see if there are. Then we're going to conclude the hearing. We will take a break. I'm sorry, Dorothy Pam.
I just thought I'd had a few quick comments. The question of
fire and police equipment and stuff, we seem to get, it's very hard to get any real sense of there seem to be two sides on that. I'm just wondering if it's possible to have some outside agency determine what is or is not needed, because we keep hearing contrary opinions all the time. I also want to absolutely support the school in getting the funding that it needs and deserves for all the arts and tech funding and for increased guidance and mental health assistance for the students. And I support a BIPOC teen space. And in addition, the enlarged teen space at the library. One will not do all of it, but a teen space at the library meets certain needs and certain people, and a larger, more involved space, which would involve a wider variety of activities, some of which are noisy and in team involved, is absolutely essential. So I'm speaking up for the young people and the youth of this town. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy. Are there any other councilor comments before we close the hearing? Seeing none, then I'm going to ask councilors, we're going to put a note on the screen. If you do not want to disconnect and reconnect, then please put block out your video, block out your sound, and we will see you back here in at 6:30.
We need to adjourn meetings.
Yes, thank you. Andy, please go ahead.
I adjourn the Finance Committee meeting.
Okay, and I am adjourning the Committee of the Whole meeting of the Town Council for the purposes of this hearing. We'll see you at 6:30. Thank you.